Well, welcome to another Workshop Wednesday, all about casual conversations for serious workflows, brought to you by schoolofbookkeeping.com, where you can learn QuickBooks your way. And playing the part of Rachel again is our good friend, Matthew Spotfulton.
Hello, nice to see you guys again today. Thank you.
I appreciate you voice modulation there
What
to
are you talking
pretend
about? This
that.
is my normal voice. No. Yours is just
Well,
so deep and made for radio, I have to, like,
that's
interact
right.
with it. Exactly. It's
Well,
gonna be a fun
Matthew,
topic today, I think, right?
yeah, I appreciate you being so flexible. Rachel decided to take a girls' trip, um, and she's actually flying into where I am, which has nothing to do with why she's taking the girls' trip, but um, it just so happens to be coming into Fort Myers, Florida. The plane
Nice.
should be landing in about 20 minutes or so, but that is why Rachel's not here today. She is on vacation. And so we appreciate Matthew being so uber flexible and joining us as well, because I can't have a casual conversation by myself.
Well, you can, and you're always right that way, but this is one of the perks
So,
of kind of owning your own business is the ability to kind of move things around and adjust it where you need to. And,
yeah,
part of today's conversation, I'm going to be just as much as the student, I think. Learning a little bit more of how to do things better for my clients as well.
yes, because under no, I don't know, fanfare, um, QuickBooks Commerce or the Commerce tab inside of QuickBooks Online uh, really is kind of a misnomer, and that's what we want to unpack here, because I had set this up a while ago as a test for my I call him my education client. He is he's he's the kind of client that will just do things and then I have to learn about them. So I kind of give it back to him, and I'll do things for his QuickBooks.
Okay.
So it's a little tit for tat, and we have a pretty good understanding about that. It's like if you're going to force me to learn some of these things, then I'm going to use you as a guinea pig for some of these things as well. So I had set it up. He sells on Shopify and Amazon. So good news that it actually does connect to both of those. And so I just wanted to really use that as a sandbox, but actually with a live client. He doesn't do a lot of sales, so this sort of thing isn't like a huge impact to it. But there's been some changes, and I noticed some changes inside of QB Commerce, especially with the Shopify connection, that looks like we've been being promised for a really long time. And so I wanted to have a workshop kind of diving into that a little bit here. So appreciate you joining us, Matt, and everybody else that is joining us as well. So this is all centering around our e-commerce fundamentals course that we have on School of Bookkeeping. Rachel and I did a series of workshops, and we repurposed those for these topics. And I wanted to share a little bit about. Wait a minute, where'd it go? Okay. Share my screen. There we go. So our course is live, and it's there. And these are all the modules that are there. You can see there's 50 different lessons
Oh, wow.
that you can go in and dive into some of these topics. But we really just kind of break it down into what e-commerce is, the components of an e-commerce business, sales tax considerations, inventory management in e-commerce, shipping and fulfillment, online sales channels, and then the accounting and workflows with sales connectors, or bridges as we call them. And so I wanted to add another section specifically about QuickBooks Commerce into that course. And that's really what we're going to be kind of diving into. If we go into the module, we have 5 lessons already in there. And I really just wanted to make this course kind of a one-stop shop. Because it does tend to be, if you start doing a Google search for QuickBooks Commerce, that
Oh, it's outrageous. There's tons
that
of stuff everywhere, right?
yeah, and it's what's new, what's old, what is it outdated or up to date. Um, so that's really what we're kind of striving for here at School of Bookkeeping, is to have a one-stop shop. And when you go into any of these topics, you'll be able to what I've been trying to do is just kind of compile the best information that's out there. And then for anybody that happens to be a member of School of Bookkeeping or have access to this course, you can just put in a comment in there to ask a specific question if you do have
Nice.
anything about that. As well as we have a community inside of our learning platform so that you can ask specific questions as well. But if you have any confusion about anything that we're talking about here on any of our courses, you can just ask the question right there on the comments on the lesson itself, and then you'll be able to, that will be helping other people as well. If they may have the same question on that topic, you can, just we'll learn from each other from those courses. So we wanted to just kind of go through what's changed, what's new, what's updated, right? So you can connect sales channels with commerce, and what we're talking about with commerce is we're talking about this little um, sidebar over here, this commerce sidebar over in QuickBooks. Let me just go to the overview. So you can connect, I think now it's four different sales channels, or at least it's, last I knew it was three. But Etsy, I think, is creeping its way into the sales channels that you can add
Oh.
in QB Commerce. Because all of this, I think the history of some of this was um, QuickBooks acquired two companies. Couple years ago, and Matthew, maybe you can um, chime in on those things. But One SaaS was a company that they purchased, which does a lot of this e-commerce connections between online sales channels and QuickBooks. And then they purchased a company called TradeGecko. And TradeGecko was more of the inventory management component of that, and then started to incorporate these functions or features inside of the QuickBooks ecosystem. Now, Matthew, do you have e-commerce clients or inventory management clients or clients that sell online?
So I tend to stay away from any companies that are heavy inventory just because we haven't had great options of how to handle a lot of this stuff. But I do have e-commerce clients. I actually argue most everybody nowadays has a form of an e-commerce client. Because as soon as you start thinking about payment gateways like Stripe or Square, you're in that realm where you're having to capture the money coming in a certain way. But one that I'm working with right now has, I think it's 6 different sales channels, um, being Etsy, eBay, Shopify are 3 of the big ones. And then also some other, specific sites like Depop, Macari, and Poshmark. So the way you have to record all of these things, becomes difficult, and trying to tie out the year end and making sure each of the months are all lined up correct. Hearing that this is now gonna work with more of those channels, I'm excited. I can actually streamline the workflow.
Yeah, well, I'm not gonna say it's the bee's knees, right? It's do bees have knees? I don't know.
Maybe.
And why are they so great if if they do
Exactly.
have knees? Um, because in the grand scheme of and then the reason I chose Shopify and Amazon as the examples here, not just because this client has both of them, but they are like different ends of the spectrum when it
It's a
comes
great
to
point.
sales channels and how the reality of that, right? So, in the grand scheme of things and just the fundamental aspect of e-commerce, you've got the sale happening, and those sales are happening, each and every day. And then a couple days later, under normal circumstances, you get a payment,
Yeah.
into the into the bank, right? So the reconciling the sale and accounting for all of that,
It's annoying.
uh,
It's
you know,
frustrating.
the
Yeah.
shipping, the fees, and transaction
Returns,
fees, returns,
partner fees, marketing fees,
and and
fees for
and
fees.
applying all that, or drilling that all down to what actually showed up in the bank account is really where people who specialize in e-commerce accounting really prove their worth, right?
Yeah.
Because um, you know it probably doesn't take too much uh, searching to find an e-commerce seller who's living in the bank feed and just recording everything to revenue that came in from a payout, whatever that happens to be, not tracking their inventory, not tracking the the fees or revenue differentiation between what made up that amount, um, and then accounting for their inventory management if they are selling hard goods, which they typically are. If digital stuff is fine, you're not tracking all that stuff, and that's really where commerce is designed to be an entry point. I'm not going to say it's the end all and be all, because one, to your point, in your clients, that you have with multiple sales channels, if one of these sales channels is not connectable, then you don't have a one-stop shop to be able to do that. And mixing and matching different sales connectors can be even more um, convoluted, right? So ideally, you'd want to have one solution to bring in all of their different types of transactions.
That's kind of where I've been running into some of my challenges with one of my clients. Is I was using a different type of a connector, so not commerce, to pull in their eBay information, and everything was looking great throughout the different months. But then I go and I'm trying to match everything to the K1 at the end of the year, and all of a sudden my sales amounts aren't matching what's on the boxes of the K1s, and it's not off drastically, but OCD kicks in. Now you're starting to look at it, it's like, what's
Gotta have
going on?
somebody.
Why is this off a little bit? And having to pull in, review all the different stuff in a nice clean way, push things in that somehow didn't get pushed
Hmm.
through, and then having whole different like workflows, like you said, for these other channels that aren't connected to anything.
Right. And so, and the two ends of the spectrum is, an online sales channel, whether it be Shopify, Magento, um, whatever, Equid, whatever the sales channel of choice is for the shopping cart, and then a marketplace, which we had unpacked that in our fundamentals
Yeah,
course, is Shopify and Amazon are you know the Kleenex of of those examples, right? Um, those are the name brands, and all of them are going to have uniqueness to them, which is what makes this whole thing very challenging. So, in a in Amazon's example, Amazon is nice enough to hold on to your money for 2 weeks, right? And they do this thing where you have all these sales, and fees, and all sorts of things that could increase or lower. If it's fulfilled by Amazon, if it's stored by Amazon, if it's looked at by Jeff Bezos, whatever. They put in all sorts of Amazon fees, but you're basically selling things and fulfilling them for 2 weeks, and then Amazon will send you a what they call a settlement report, which will be basically the statement of here's what you sold, here's what was returned, and itemizing out all of those um, categories of fees and incomes, to be able to align that with your payout, at the end of the day. Um, and it's very challenging, especially if you are a hard, um,
talk about a cash flow killer, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, I don't even know if it's even possible to to ask Amazon, hey, can I at least get deposits, uh, ahead of time? Um, and I'm sure there's a fee to do.
Yeah, early deposit fee. We'll take a little bit more of your money. We've seen those before. So
That's they leave it up to Amazon to figure out a way to get a fee out of things. But that's part of it. That's a huge challenge for somebody who's selling on Amazon is, hey, I've got to wait 2 weeks to even get get the funds. Now once that starts, that whole process starts, then they can kind of work with that. But if they're sending stuff out the door, they're charging shipping fees and things like that. um, that's a, as you mentioned, it's a cash flow killer.
think about busy season times, right? So, I'm actually sitting here listening to you and I'm starting to feel very guilty about my box of returns that needs to go to the UPS store to go back to Amazon right now. And I'm wondering if that 2 weeks is done in on purpose because of 30-day return window. So it's
Yeah,
like they've got that 2 weeks to kind of give some buffer. They're not using the whole 30 days, but they're trying to build in some buffer to make it easier for quicker returns
yeah,
or money back to people.
yeah. And then the terms that they use to call these things are like branded specifically and not
Yeah.
universal. And then you see this thing called a reversal referral fee. Like, well, what does that mean?
Keep those referrals, please. We're not interested in returns. Like, yeah, that's weird.
Yeah. So, let's see here.
I
Okay,
know
so go ahead.
I noticed on the screen that where you're looking at here that for the
Mhm.
channel connections that you've got the ability to auto add transactions or not to, it looks like, right?
Right. And that's what I did with this client was not do that. I want to make
Okay.
sure that could be a worse type of situation than the bank feed rules, right?
Mhm.
Because you're dealing with all sorts of transactions that could happen. So now conversely, with Shopify is typically like a 2-day window of sales to payouts, right? So you don't have to wait the 2 weeks like you do with Amazon to try to figure all that stuff out. But let's go in here and take a look at the settings.
So obviously one of the key things I'm sure you talked well, I've heard you talk about it in the different sessions is having separate clearing accounts for your different connections, right? So a Shopify clearing, an Amazon clearing, or whichever clearing to help you do these reconciliations.
Yes, it's always good to segregate those things so that you don't have any kind of interspersing. And the nice part about the commerce, I mean, if I would give a nod to the commerce setup, is they do the creation of those accounts for you,
Okay.
and they will create them in the right manner of this is an asset account or another current asset or account or however if it's a liability, if it's the reserve or whatever it is. They have a pretty good handle on the creation of those accounts. The naming of those accounts may be a little, a little bit to be much to be desired, but you can change those account
Okay.
namings afterwards. But in general, here we're just looking at the Shopify settings. You have the what account things are deposited to, so the payouts, um, and then if you have to have a fee to Shopify, where do you pay that from? Again, this is just matching these things into what happens in reality, and then whether or not you want to have them auto add these transactions or not, which would definitely turn it off for sure until you're pretty confident that this is all right. We can now put it on cruise control. Items, right? You can have sales point to a account or a item, not multiples. Now, this is where QuickBooks Commerce, which is the Trade Greco acquisition, is coming into this realm, right? So some of the newer or newest features of QuickBooks like sales orders and product variances and things like that. That's where these features are coming from inside of Commerce. But in this particular instance, since I set it up a long time ago, um, he's going to be the last one to get some of this functionality, um, as opposed to somebody who's setting it up today. Um, that may be um, that may be
Always
a,
works that way, doesn't it? All the
yeah,
all the rollouts that you want for a certain client, they're in every other client's files, but not the one you actually want it for some
yeah.
reason.
The early adopters get put at
Yeah.
the end of the line,
Yeah.
which then causes people not to adopt things, waiting for the dust to settle. Right, so you can map things to the shipping income, and these accounts or these items were created by Commerce, right? So they're all pointing in the right direction. So setting it up is relatively quick when you're turning these things on, but you can always go in and change these things after the
But
fact.
before you go on too far,
Mhm.
on your items, one of the things that I happen to see on the screen is
Mhm.
your sales for Shopify are actually being tagged to PayPal sales.
Yeah.
So one of the questions I wanted to ask is, let's say you've got your connection set up and something's being pointed to the wrong place or you're having challenges. Can you pull things back to fix like you can with certain applications like Bookkeep where you can pull back their journal entries and push it back in?
Yeah, I mean, most of the transactions function very similar to a bank feed type of
Okay.
situation. So you
Okay.
do have the option to unmatch or undo or pull it back, make your changes, and then
Perfect.
push it in again. Now, if you've closed your books or put any other kind of stoppage on editing of transactions, that may be an obstacle, but of course that's an obstacle with anything else that
Yeah.
that you
Yeah.
would be able to do. But yes, you can unmatch and do those undoing of things. And then in advance, excuse me, got some new things that I can't do is what it's what it's saying. Choose an account for what? I don't know. This account isn't available, is what it's saying. But then you've got your selling fees, subscription fees, adjustments. This is actually kind of nice now that I'm combing this through, because most um, sales channel integrators, connectors or bridges from like a Cinder or Webgility, they don't have insight into the subscription fees. And we did a
Mm.
whole workshop um, on mapping and splitting that out because Shopify is does these things, right? They charge fees for their subscription apps that you've added on, and that's where you pay for shipping. When you're a Shopify seller, is in the subscription fees, and you want that split out. Now, at the end of the month, if that is several $1,000s, you probably want that broken out by apps
Absolutely.
versus subscription versus shipping. Not sure if this will do that for you or not. So remains to be seen if this will actually be helpful or not. But they have insight into it at least, so they can actually this can be something that can be built upon, which is a nod to um, to that, right? So that they can actually see the subscription fees. So when they come in, hopefully they can split it out. If they can't in the future, if they can't now, they should be able to do that in the future. And then some other options in there as well. But what I
I
wanted,
like the reserve balance and pending balance that are there. That's
Mhm.
another thing with a lot of these different channels where, again, they call them different names, but they withhold X amount of the money that has to sit there for whatever reason until you're able to access it, and that can always cause challenges when you're trying to complete your reconciliation.
Right now, if you're not using inventory tracking inside of, and this is where the information that's available is terribly confusing, because they have this chart of the feature option and the subscription level, and um, yes, if you have I'm not sure what no inventory tracking means. If that means that you're not tracking inventory at all inside of your QuickBooks, or if you're wanting to track inventory tracking within Commerce, right? Because these articles and links that are under the inventory tracking piece of it are specifically solely for commerce, right? So importing products from sales channels, well, that's specifically from dealing with commerce or
Yeah.
e-commerce or Shopify connection, setting initial costs. This is something new that you can do inside of QuickBooks. But if you just have inventory tracking turned on and don't have commerce connected to it, you can't set initial costs. What you I mean, you can. It's just not the way this says, and we'll go through some of these things, and then tracking cost of goods sold. Yes, you can do that in either one. So there's a lot of information. Is this just because I've connected with QB Commerce or the Commerce section, or I'm just doing inventory or tracking the on-hand quantities in general inside of Plus or Advanced? Really kind of maddening when you have all this information.
I think the key difference is because they have made improvements in QuickBooks Online, just the inventory stuff like you just mentioned. So the key difference becomes when you're using commerce and you have these different sales channels connected, you're uploading your inventory items there, the cost of it, like your pricing there. So is it because it's grabbing from there and feeding back into QuickBooks that way, in comparison to if you'd have to be manually doing all that stuff inside QuickBooks Online without any commerce aspect of it, and it doesn't. That's where we still kind of say like, you need to be very careful how you're doing that, right?
Right. Now, this particular option, right here, you see it's at the top, says sales orders and refunds is moved to the sales menu, and you can go to sales orders to access your orders and refunds. It says take me there, but sales orders and I mean that's a term that's going to perk up a lot of ears, right? Because sales orders is something that QuickBooks Online has not done since its inception. And what that actually will do, um, we I'll go there. We do have now in under sales, we have our normal all sales invoices estimates, and now this new sales orders, right? And then I go over here to new. Oh my goodness, I have a sales order here from the plus new button for this client. But watch what happens when I go to it.
Wah, wah.
We're sorry. What the? So this is one of those things where it's kind of like it's a drawbridge. You've got a gap between the reality and the hopefully the destination. Matthew, you were going to say something?
So I just, while you were doing it, I clicked over to the client I'm working on, and he's got the sales orders on the side. But as soon as I go to click on it, it gives me just a little bit of different screen saying connect your different channels, right? So
Yeah,
the purpose of doing that is to let people know if you're not using commerce, sales orders don't exist in your world.
yeah. Now on mine it says you're using the older layout for QuickBooks invoices that's not compatible with the current version of sales orders. Please try again after switching to the newer version of the invoice. So, hey, you know what? I think I better do that, right? So I'll go over here to an invoice, bring up the invoice. Guess what? I am on the new the new layout for here. So if I go in, there's my modernized template. Modern
Yeah.
design is the default. So why am I getting this? This is now I'm going to need to talk to Intuit to find this out, and I'm going to probably be sorely disappointed in the information that I receive.
Not
Maybe
very
I'll
intuitive.
right. So I'm just going to wait until until the dust settles, because again, I'm pretty confident that this is again that drawbridge of, well, he was an early adopter into QuickBooks Commerce before even the modern invoice template experience came out, and before now these features are being rolled out. So I think eventually he'll have that, and eventually it'll be rolled out eventually to all users of QuickBooks Online. Um, but the question it remains: is a sales order, what a sales order is to QuickBooks, right? So I was reading various conflicting information about a sales order would actually reduce the quantity on hand. Well, that's not really what a sales order is supposed to do, right? I mean, that's not the QuickBooks desktop definition of a sales order, is that it would reduce it from the available quantity, as opposed to reducing, an estimate doesn't reduce it,
Correct.
and an invoice does. So there's this middle ground of what's available to sell, and that's what you want to sell off from, because whether it's sitting on the shelf or not is relevant if you've promised half of
Yeah, if you're
that to
promised.
somebody else.
So again, basic concept is a company sends you over a purchase order because they want to buy 10 of your goods. You reply with a sales order to them saying, hey, we've got these 10. We're going to be getting ready to ship it to you. We'll create the shipping. Like it said at the bottom there, you can buy your shipping label if you want. Then once it goes and it's getting shipped out, that's when an invoice is created. That's when the inventory actually completely goes away. So it's on hand, on hold, and, sold type of scenario, right?
Yes. So I'm going to go into the products and services window, which is not there. I'm not sure.
The dreaded out of stock. That's always the scary part as we wait for Dan
Got.
to pop back.
Oh, what happened? Am I not here?
Oh, you're back now. Your
Okay.
message is too powerful, so it stuttered, but you go.
Okay. Yeah, so we go into products and services now, and now we've got some alerts here, where we, have things a little bit differently, and we see that the products and service window is a little bit different than what we're used to seeing in another client that doesn't have any of this commerce stuff connected. But under more, now I have more options, right? You can manage your categories, the price rules, but now we have this thing called an inventory count, um, as well as our starting value. So if I go into inventory count, I can now basically do a physical inventory inside of my QuickBooks. Again, as Rachel and I have talked about before, uh, tracking inventory and doing inventory inside of QuickBooks Online is going to be primarily reserved for resellers of hard goods, right? So if I buy stuff and I sell that same stuff, and I don't need to know or do anything from the time that I buy something and I sell something, that's okay to do inside inside of QuickBooks Online. But just bear in mind that if you need to know where it's located, and this sort of thing of having inventory in multiple different places, like say you sent a whole bunch of stuff to Amazon for fulfillment, right? You probably want to know how much you have on hand at Amazon versus how much you have sitting in your store, right?
Yep.
So this is not probably going to be a great use case for that. And then the Amazon connection may or may not, uh, track your inventory when it actually gets to that point of being able to do that, because you're an omni-channel seller. You're selling in multiple different locations, and you want to know the on-hand quantities of all that. Probably not your best choice. But sometimes you get to a certain point, and this may actually be a good fit for you. But you can do inventory count. So I started an inventory count. So let me go back in here. Actually, let me start over. Let me delete this one, which I can. Let's start a brand new inventory count. Not much to see here. It's just asking for what's the name of it. So let's just say year end. And then you can put some notes, and then you can put all your products, or you can select a subset of your product. And when you choose that,
So that's really cool. That means if you have a large warehouse with a lot of inventory, the challenge is always getting businesses to do physical inventory counts on a consistent basis, right? So
Mhm.
sometimes the trade-off is they'll do more frequent inventories, but they will do sections and they do a rolling section type thing. So that's where that subset would come into play instead of having to do the whole physical thing, possibly.
Right. And you can categorize your, if you're using categories on your items, you can bring in those items by that category, so that you only you can bring in a bunch of items at the same time. Now person, this company only has one product for sale, so that's the only one that we're actually going to do a count on. And this will say, he has 733 on hand, and then we can start counting, which essentially does what an inventory adjustment would do, is ask you,
Yeah.
well, what's the new quantity, right? And assuming that you have a whole bunch of items on here, it could be daunting to
You
have
can't pay
all
me
of
enough to do inventory, like count somebody's inventory for them. I won't,
right.
not anymore.
But nice enough here is that you can search for items in here or filter as well. So this will compact the list to make it a little bit easier to work with. Again, because this is online, you will essentially have a way to go around and count this inventory a lot faster, because you can put something on a tablet, go to the QuickBooks Online website, and then just do it on a tablet. Right now, you don't have a barcode scanner, and those are things that people are looking
Yeah.
for in not causing, but eliminating human error from what I'm counting and the product that I'm counting. There's still that
Doubling it.
possibility. I could count this one, but then type it into the wrong item,
Yeah.
right? So still available for human error on that aspect.
Did it have a physical count sheet that you could print up if you're doing subsections?
Not from here, from there. Yeah. So that's an inventory count. So we want to make sure that that's kind of under the more. We have the starting value, or as this is calling it, just allows you to go into again another screen with those items specifically selected. Looks like nothing. I've got a bunch of
For free.
difference, because now I have this product / variant thrown in there, which I've never been able to set up. Because if I go into my item, let's just pull one of these items up.
Well, it could be because at the top there you have the error that's saying you have 2 items that are, you don't have initial cost set.
Yeah, when I click on that, oh, now they show up. Okay, so then I'm able to choose add initial costs. These are just purchase parts, but ultimately in this scheme of things, in this particular case, they set them up as inventory items, even though we didn't have to.
Yeah.
Right? We were trying to fool QuickBooks into a manufacturing process, because he has one product for sale, but he wanted to track when it was sent for manufacturing and the lead time on that, and then when it
Oh,
was
like the whole build.
in transit. You wanted to account for the 8 weeks of it coming over from China. So we were just kind of moving it through that process using different items. So that's what
Interesting.
these are all about. Told you he was my education client. So
I don't wanna send I'm like, I'm already having nightmares picturing these books where you're connecting apps, he's connecting different apps, and then somewhere in the middle, you're having a happy app land with
yeah,
all these different transactions that are spaghettied, and you're like, "Oh, I'll get this cleaned up today." I'm
yep,
like, "Okay."
yeah. He's he he he's not
Don't do that
foreign.
to his clients. That's all I'm gonna say. Don't do that to us.
He's okay with extensions. That's for sure.
Okay. Okay.
So that's another function or feature in here. Just want to make sure I covered everything here on the
So
topic.
price rules also came in to lower levels of QBO then with Commerce also, right? Because price rules used to only be available in Plus and above, unless that is well,
if you're tracking inventory, you would be in at least
Yeah,
plus.
yeah, never mind. But because you can do commerce with lower levels, you just can't do the inventory tracking would be the key thing then.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. The in the grand scheme of things, each version of QuickBooks Online, you have a number of sales channels that you can connect.
Oh, that's
One
right.
one with Simple Start, three with Essentials, and then Unlimited with Plus and Advanced. They're still at a maximum of three, maybe four. So the Unlimited is not as big of a selling feature as one would think. But
So you get
uh,
unlimited with essentials at that point too then.
yes,
Okay.
essentially you have essentially unlimited sales channels with the three that are available.
Okay.
But this is probably a long play for Intuit, right? I mean, because they have they acquired OneSAS, which has a multitude
Yeah.
of sales channel connections. I think they just want to get the three main ones right, which
Get that
essentially,
working correct. Yeah.
yeah,
Thank you.
which you've got online sales channel, a marketplace, and then this hybrid of eBay, which could be an online sales channel or a marketplace. I'm not sure, and they do. They're the Amex of of um, of online sales channels because they just do things their way because they can. And I got that a lot when working with Webgility. It was like where I did have an eBay seller. It's like, well, we can't do that because eBay does it differently. What were you gonna
Yeah.
say?
So the client I'm working with right now, he does custom boots. So he'll go and he'll buy these different custom boots from different markets and such, turn around and sell them online. And I've been using for again the different channels I mentioned before, like eBay, Shopify, Etsy, and some others as well. Bookkeep for part of it. But now that I'm seeing after we finish up this year with the stuff, I'm going to take a look at this connection setup. Since we could actually grab three of the different pieces, pull it in directly, I'll end up testing it in a test file and see how it looks. It may help the efficiency because I ended up still having problems with some of the eBay numbers.
Right now, one of the big things that's unique about the QuickBooks Commerce is being able to do the record the payouts, right? And
Yeah.
you'll be able to essentially um, do the things that you are looking to do from the payouts perspective. And that's one of the things that you want to keep in mind with all of this is is QuickBooks and the commerce is not necessarily until all of these features are fleshed out and available for everyone. Uh, you're not going to be putting in the sales per se um, as they're sold. You'll be doing that from the payout, and then QuickBooks will then allow you to create those sales transactions. With
Really?
Shopify, yeah. So let's take a look at this one
'Cause
here.
that's interesting. I mean, because the sale is the sale regardless of when you take
Right,
like, because if the money's sitting in their holding account, you still sold the stuff.
right. So here's a payout, right? So here's a payout for 319. That's quickly. Let me just find one that hopefully has. Here's a here's one with two. Well, it's just one sale. So
We'll pretend there's 2 though. I see
yeah,
what you're saying. There's multiple transactions in the same day is the point, right?
right. Maybe I got. I'm just looking for. I see all these card transactions too. This is
Good
a
average
large
sale
one.
amount though. That's a nice thing.
Yep. Okay, so here we have two sales. So let's take a look at the details. Right. So here's our sales. It's got two different orders,
There you
right?
go.
And this was on 2/8. The payout date is 2/10, right? So there's a 2-day gap between this sale and then a 3-day gap between this one,
Oh, I get it
right?
now.
Right.
Okay.
So it's not putting these sales in until the payout comes in.
Okay.
So even though um, these sales actually occurred and things went out the door and all of those good things that actually occurred, it's not going to record anything dealing with the sale until the payout comes in which case, you're behind on inventory management and all of the other things that
Seriously.
go along with the accounting side of things. Uh, with a Amazon, you're gonna be 2 weeks behind, right? Because the payout isn't coming until the settlement report comes in, so the sales aren't going to be um, entered until that payout is actually created. So I think you said before, womp womp. It's
Yeah. Jamie was just saying you can't until the payout happens. It makes okay, I see what you're saying there. Yeah, because that's their way of doing their own quick reconciliation off of what
right,
the sale was.
right.
Wow. Um,
So with something like Shopify, it's a short window, right?
yeah.
But as opposed to Amazon, right? So Amazon is a 2 week window before that all takes place. But again, it's a trade off, right? Like here, I'm reconciling all of this to what's actually showed up in the bank account, and because Amazon is much more convoluted than something like a Shopify, because here you see, right? Here's the expenses that
Mhm.
went into this payout. We have two orders and two expenses, right? There was the Shopify transactional fees, right? So that matches pretty well and pretty succinctly to Shopify's payout, and so that makes it a lot easier. So let's take a look at an Amazon one.
Oh, my least favorite friend is up next, PayPal.
Yeah, we're not even going to talk about PayPal
Okay.
today, right? So here's an Amazon payout where it's got a deposit transaction, an expense transaction, and another deposit, right? So if I go and look at the expense, this is the subscription fee, right, which is $39.99. Let's look at this one. This one actually. So we've got sales receipt. So here's actually a sale. He doesn't do a lot of selling on Amazon. So we have a sales receipt, which is for $779. There's the Amazon sale item for sales. There's the shipping and the tax that they collected, um, which gets recorded. I'm just curious. This is the payout was
It does have the undo
110.
button like we talked about, which I like. Okay.
Yeah. So we do have the sales receipt, which was it actually does date it that way, but it doesn't date it um, until
Yeah.
the payout comes in, right? So in this case, the payout was on 110. The sales receipt isn't part of this until the payout comes in. It created two sales receipts nicely to split them between periods, which is good because we have a end of the year sales receipt and then a sales receipt for 110,
Oh,
which
okay.
is remaining. And that's actually a good point. It will only create one sales receipt for all of your sales on the date of the payout. So it didn't actually create it, and it's not tracking inventory anyway. It's just accounting for the revenue, and then the deposit for the payout, and then expenses. Here's this
The two break
540.
out again because of the crossover the period. So at least they thought of that.
Yeah. So here's the fees, which it ends up creating, these accounts for Amazon selling fees. The description is where you're going to have any kind of insight as to what these fees actually were for, right? So there's your tax paid, there's the reserve coming from the reserve balance, and then the oh so detailed fees
Yeah.
broken out there. So unless you have your settlement report in front of you to actually account for, well, what is this 1764? This is really isn't telling us much of anything here.
So, as an example, with the company I keep bringing up, I was looking at their eBay setup and I was trying to match up the different transactions in the month on their statement. they would show each individual piece, but because the type of connector I was using, it would pull everything in as one single day. So I'm sitting here and I'm having to add up the 3 different sales for one day, the 3 different fees for one day to see if it matched what happened in the entry,
Mhm.
just to try to do the reconciliation to see where a challenge was. This is, at least it sounds like, lining up more appropriate to the statement, which would make the job of reconciling and catching things a little bit faster.
Yeah. It will definitely it's a step in the right direction, especially for Amazon if they're not, accounting for the inventory side of things, and
Yeah.
they're not too concerned about, um, you know, it's taking it in a step in the right direction where it's accounting for things based off and splitting them out based off of the payout. And every 2 weeks is a lot better than, the the every 2 weeks and then somebody trying to comb through and figure out all this stuff to
Yeah.
reconcile it together. Because I don't know how long that would take, a week or two after that to actually figure all that stuff out. So being that it's doing that is actually a plus.
Yep.
And once you've, because I think for most Amazon sellers, they're just, okay, whatever you say, Jeff. Yeah, because they're not going. They're if they do find a discrepancy, trying to get that corrected might be a little bit more of a challenge than just, all right,
Yeah.
making a future decision of, do we really want to be selling on Amazon?
"Excuse me, Mr. Bezos, on your billion-dollar yacht, you missed 20 to 5 cents for me. Can you please get that back over?" Right? Like,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. They do really good customer service wise when you're a consumer, but
Okay.
not so much when you're a seller.
It's good to know. I feel
So,
smarter, Dan. Thank you.
all right.
Um, it's given me some good insights on some ways to, look into improving some of the efficiencies of how I'm helping with this client. So, this is cool.
So that's the update as of March 19th, 2025 on commerce. I'm sure tomorrow, the 20th, something may change.
Don't change
Um,
it all. We'll be back again.
right.
So,
But as we see this litany of things continuing to happen, we'll keep that updated. And again, in School of Bookkeeping under the e-commerce fundamentals course, we would want that to be a one-stop shop for all things e-commerce, including QuickBooks Commerce or whatever they want to call it these days. So we appreciate you joining us, Matthew. I'm really glad that you popped in, and I'm super excited that Restream fixed whatever problem it was having 10 minutes before we went live, because that would have been we would have missed the entire whole thing here today. So appreciate you joining us, Matthew. Any last any final words from?
Rachel, I want a T-shirt.
Right, he needs a uniform.
Yes.
All right. So next week we are going to be talking about updates to the audit log, which has undergone its own little renaissance. So we'll be taking a look at the changes that are available inside the audit log. So hopefully you join us then, and we'll see you next week. Everybody have a great day.